Greetings, folks, from Munich. This is the latest episode of the Processing Blue podcast, where I am joined by my partner in crime. There are no sidekicks on this show, just a partner in crime, a bro pilot. Alex Zietlow, who is also, you may have heard, is a Panthers beat reporter. Did I even introduce myself?
No, I don't think you did.
I don't think I did. You might be used to the nasally stylings of my voice, but just so you're aware, because Scott Fowler was on here a couple of weeks ago, this is Mike Kaye, fellow Panthers beat reporter, coming to you from Germany, where the Panthers will play the Giants, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But the big news from Wednesday, obviously, was the Panthers made another wide receiver trade. Jonathan Mingo is heading to the Dallas Cowboys, along with a 7th-round pick from the Kansas City Chiefs that was acquired last year for a 2025 4th-round pick. Now, if you would have told me that you could get a 4th-round pick for Jonathan Mingo a year and a half after he was selected 39th overall, I would have told you that's pretty funny. Alex, you should lay off whatever you're drinking. But turns out,
please. I was expecting. I don't even know. I was waiting with bated breath of what kind of
analogy I had. Sorry, I'm jet lagged.
Or I was really thinking that you were gonna kind of tie this into Germany somehow. Like you need to lay off of like the big Kolsch or whatever the big there.
I mean, I thought that you could maybe get the bottom half of a Lederhosen for Jonathan Mingo, and it turns out, all you need is a overreactionary, self-involved owner / GM and Jerry Jones to say, "Hey, look, I like that guy coming out of college." I think it in a way makes up for the mediocre at best returns that the Panthers got for Diontae Johnson. But let's get into why Jonathan Mingo was more appealing than Diontae Johnson on the trade market. Now, let's be careful here. He had 12 catches for 121 yards in 9 games this season. He had 1 catch for 1 yard in the past 16 quarters of Panthers football. And yet he was still more appealing than a former Pro Bowler. Here's why. He's still 23. He was the 39th overall pick in last year's draft. His tape showed a lot of potential. The Panthers have been a perennial, loser. And so if you are an owner or a head coach with hubris, you would say, well, that's the Panthers' problem. I can get the most out of them. It's the NFL. Everybody has some sort of hubris. I'd also say him being cost controlled for the next 2.5 years is a very significant thing, especially if you see the upside in him as a number 2 wide receiver to CeeDee Lamb. Where this kind of takes a weird turn is the Cowboys are 3-5, just put their franchise quarterback on IR. They've got matchups with the Eagles, Washington Commanders, and Houston Texans over the next 3 weeks. All of them are very, very good and competing for division titles. And CeeDee Lamb has a shoulder injury. So you just traded positive assets for a player who is young, who is cost controlled, who is on a rookie contract. But you're giving away assets that, that 7th-round pick is going to be towards the end of the 7th round, one of the last picks before the compensatory pick allotment goes out. And so it's a puzzling move for the Cowboys, and in turn, a big win for the Panthers, who I think played this well. Originally, when I saw the 4th-round pick, I thought Miles Sanders was going to be part of the deal because, frankly, trading a 4th-round pick for Jonathan Mingo when he has not scored a touchdown at all in his career is wild. But, Alex, what's your take on all of this, just with the fresh eyes?
Well, I want to go back to one point that you said just now, the hubris of the Cowboys organization to think, okay, the Panthers didn't do much with this 2nd-round pick, but we can. And I think a lot of teams across the NFL and a lot of fans across the NFL look at the Panthers organization and say, okay, well, that organization is so poorly run or whatever verb they want to use, or I don't know if it's an adjective or adverb or whatever, but whatever they want to say, they say, okay, this player cannot survive in the Panthers organization because blank, because this offense is blank, because this owner is blank, whatever. And they do have the thing that substantiates those claims is that they do have recent examples of that. They have Sam Darnold balling out for the Minnesota Vikings. They got Baker Mayfield like going toe to toe with Patrick Mahomes in prime time. And Baker had a terrible year in Carolina and now is having a resurgence in Tampa Bay. They have a head coach in Dave Canales who is known as a quarterback whisperer and who can't wring the most out of either a veteran in Andy Dalton or this new guy in Bryce Young. And then, of course, the latest example of all this is when Bryce Young gets benched in week 2. That's the prevailing narrative. The narrative is no longer that Bryce is, doesn't have the arm strength or doesn't have the size to be an NFL player. The prevailing narrative is Bryce never had a chance because he went to Carolina. And I think a lot of that is whether NFL fandom knows it or not. I think that has seeped in to Jonathan Mingo. Okay, well, Jonathan Mingo was a second-round pick. And yes, some people had him as an early day 2 pick. Some people had him as like a later day 2 pick. Like they're forgetting all that. What they remember is that he went to the Panthers and the Panthers don't let young people succeed, apparently. That's the perception. I think that the Panthers are kind of subverting that narrative this year with all their young guys playing quite well. But that's my initial reaction to all this. I think it's the Cowboys thinking, no. We remember what Jonathan Mingo did in college. We remember how much we liked him. He went to the Panthers. He never had a chance. Come to us, and he could be better. Those are my initial reactions.
Can I give you some fun stats that
Sure.
make it so that it doesn't seem like this is just an outlier situation with the Panthers? So the 33rd Team, a wonderful website, put out a few different stats the other day that I thought were mind-blowing, but also were true to form. Jonathan Mingo's 0.75 yards per route run is dead last for any wide receiver that has caught 50-plus passes since 2000. 526th out of 526. Here's another one. Here's another grouping. Among 72 wide receivers with at least 50 receptions since the start of last season, Mingo ranks 72nd in receiving yards, 71st in yards per route run, and 72nd in catch rate percentage. So that's out of 72. So he's in last in receiving yards and catch rate, and is second to last in yards per route run.
I did not realize they were that bad.
That is
Wow.
some special struggling is what that is. Like,
Yeah.
put that one on the fridge. At some point, it's like, you tried. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It was no secret. On the field, I was not fond of his game, but I'm a big believer in you praise people when they do well and you criticize them when they don't. I was very high on his performance from training camp, but I also think that's an indictment of the Panthers defense as much as anything. I just didn't see enough of the route running progress being taken from practice to the games. And look, I get it, man. Like, they didn't pick him. That, like, Dan Morgan was there, but he didn't have final say. I think it was abundantly clear what the coaching staff thought of Mingo as they moved along. Xavier Legette is tied for the lead in the NFL among rookies with 4 receiving touchdowns. Their top 3 receiving yard leaders are rookies and tight end Jatavian Sanders, Legette, and then undrafted rookie Jalen Coker. David Moore was out snapping both Coker and Mingo over the last 2 weeks. Like, at some point, it just kind of clicked that there was no future here. And the fact that they were able to get a 4th round pick for him, a 4th round pick that could be in the top half of the 4th round, is pretty notable. They now have 8 picks in the first 5 rounds. That's pretty good. Especially when you consider that they had 5 draft picks during Mingo's draft. I believe it was, they had 7 during this year's draft. I think they're stocking up. I think they're going about this the right way. I think they want to develop through the draft, and I think Mingo was a guy that just didn't have a future here, much like Deontay Johnson. What I would say is one last note on Deontay Johnson. I think that looking at the way that was handled and then the return value for Mingo kind of underlines what has not been said by the organization about Johnson, right? Like if you're that eager to get rid of this guy with a week to go, the trade interest is falling off because teams are clearly realizing there's some red flags. I don't think that says a lot for Deontay Johnson, but also remember he's on the final year of his contract. He's going to want to be paid quite a bit in free agency. And look, the history of drama kind of precedes him. So I think the Panthers got what they got, but I think if we took both of these trade returns and like X'd out the names, you would say, okay, that kind of makes sense for Mingo. He's basically worth the 7th round pick. That's what the value was for Johnson. And then you would say, okay, well, Johnson is worth a 4th round pick. That makes a lot of sense. So I think it kind of evened out, right?
Yeah.
Like I think I'd give them a C for these two trades put together, right? Like
Okay.
I'd give them an A for Mingo, and I'd probably give them like an F for Johnson. Just I mean, or maybe a D. So let's say a C plus. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fair. I didn't think to put them together, but I'm a little bit lower on the Mingo trade than I think a lot of people are for a variety of reasons. Among them, you get this.
He takes the top off the defense.
Yeah,
that's
no, I know I said that. I know that's crazy. I understand. See, here's the thing. Like, I was actually just about to praise you for last week in your green crayon costume. A lot of the things that have happened in the leading up to the trade deadline, you kind of laid out last week, and I think that goes to show that you really have a great pulse of the team. Yeah, me saying that Mingo is actually super valuable to this receiving core, even if he's not getting the catches, even if he's not getting the targets, it didn't really age that well, considering for a variety of reasons. Among them, his offensive snaps even plummeted, and to make way for the powerhouse undrafted rookie free agent Jalen Coker. I love Jalen. That's not what I'm saying, but he still wasn't drafted. He wasn't close to a 2nd round draft pick and wasn't drafted at all. I'm ultimately going to give the Mingo trade a B plus, or kind of teetering closer to an A- territory with the Panthers, purely because this was not plan A. Plan A was to draft a good 2nd round player. And I know that you said that Dan Morgan wasn't the ultimate guy who made the ultimate call, and that's true. He was still in the building.
Sure.
This wasn't even plan B. Plan B was to develop him with that first year, to grow him and Bryce together his rookie year, also to develop him this year. And we saw some really strong strides in the training camp, in the entire offseason program. He and Bryce spent a lot of time in California this summer, which
a lot of good that did both of them.
Well, but I'm just saying, that California trip, I remember we spent a lot of time talking about how important that could be to this offense. And now, I guess that's just the life in the NFL, but now it's just silly to even think about. So I think, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just wanted to support you in the way that you were supporting me. What I will say is he did improve a lot on special teams. So there was value there. On the game-winning touchdown against the Saints, he had a really nice seal block to the outside edge. So he did have a role. I think we can't just be like he was useless, but the main goal of a wide receiver is to catch passes. And
he had to get open and to support your quarterback. And he wasn't good with Bryce Young throwing him the ball, with Andy Dalton throwing the ball. At least with Deontay, it was clear, okay, he is an impact player when Andy Dalton's back there, and he wasn't as much when Bryce was throwing it to him. So at the end of the day, good for the Panthers to salvage something for this guy who dwelled in all these terrible or at the bottom of all these categories that you think are really important to wide receiver. But at the end of the day, we can't forget that this was not plan A. And that's really all I have to say about that.
So on Wednesday, the Panthers head coach, Dave Canales, after kind of leaving us in the lurch on Monday, announced Bryce Young as the Week 10 starter against the Giants in Germany, where I currently am.
Wait, Mike, are you in Germany right now?
Yeah, you might have heard. So here's what I would say about this. This was the only move to make, in my opinion. Couldn't. He made such a progression from week one, or I guess the week 8 return to week 9. You kind of had to do this. You can reset after the bye week. You can figure it out. But this is a premium opportunity for the Panthers to get 2 wins in a row with the guy they invested an incredible amount of assets in. I thought he looked good. I don't think that this game, much like the Denver game, will make or break his career here. I don't think it changes a whole lot. But what I would say is I think that Bryce Young showed a lot of fortitude in that game. I thought he was very accurate. I thought he showed a lot of confidence. You and I both don't think there's a long-term future here. Let's get that out of the way.
No.
It's very hard to come back from a benching the way that he did. And just because he is playing right now, to me, does not put an exclamation point on his future here. This is a necessity sort of thing. And so what I would say is, in that necessity, you are trying to develop this offense. You have 3, as we said before, you have 3 young pass catchers who are leading the team. Roll with the young guys, see what you got. This team is 2-7. This is a very winnable game against the Giants. Very winnable. I can't emphasize enough. If they lose to the Giants and Bryce Young plays poorly, it's a very bad look. This is the last one on the schedule where it's they should win this game.
Yep.
And I'm going to pick them. Spoiler alert. Even with Bryce starting, I'm going to pick them.
Oh, Mike.
Yeah, I'm going to fall into the trap. But what I would say is, I think when we look back at this season, this is going to be a major pressure point of whether Bryce is going to stick around. And we'll get into the Giants game a little bit more. But what's your take on Bryce being named QB1 for Week 10?
I don't think that, not to just completely echo everything you said, I don't think that Dave Canales really had a choice. I mean, how do you – he was good against the Saints. He managed the game with aplomb. Yes, he didn't have the greatest passer rating. I think it was around the 77, 78. It was something like that. But a lot of that had to do with the fact that he threw a gorgeous pass to Xavier Legette along the sideline, and it got ripped away from the ball was in Xavier's chest, and Xavier was corralling it. And then an App State alum, New Orleans Saints cornerback just rips it from his gut, basically, and they call it
as old as time, some would say.
It's really more like it really should have been ruled a fumble in my eyes, I guess. But of course, Xavier has had a hand problem. It really looked more like a wrist injury. Anyway, that's something that is worth monitoring as well. But at the end of the day, he played well enough to earn a second or this start, and he really doesn't have much margin, or he has a huge margin for playing poorly and still getting the job in my eyes at this point in the year. The Panthers are no longer really truly playing for seasonal success. The playoffs are out of the picture. This is about growing the team. They're sellers at the trade deadline. They're getting rid of their top wide receiver. They traded away Jonathan Mingo, second round wide receiver. This is a team that's not concerned with seasonal success. So what do you do when you're not concerned with seasonal success? You play your younger guys. You play the guys that you've invested a lot in to either build together so they can be good for the Panthers, or build them up so they can become assets that you can use them to build your team in other ways in the future. I don't really see what the positive would be of playing Andy Dalton this game, outside of the fact that, Andy's just better at this point, and that Andy would provide a more realistic chance at the Panthers winning, but it's not enough. It's not big enough, and the emphasis on winning isn't enough right now for the betterment of the Panthers in the future to give Andy Dalton the reins. And that's really, that's really what I have to say about it. Bryce is going against a pretty bad defense in the Giants. The Giants, Brian Burns is going to be coming after him with everything because obviously he wants to avenge his old team that he really wanted to stay in Carolina with. But yeah, Bryce is gonna be the quarterback, and I kind of think that this was the only thing Dave could have done. So,
well, moving on, let's get into the other big news for all fantasy football players, and now I can hopefully take a reprieve from being asked from like the same 8 fantasy football guys. Hey, is Jonathan Brooks going to play? Dude, I've told you from the jump. Have I not said this from the jump, Alex?
Dude, we were talking about this. Bro, we were talking about this at the beginning of the year. Like, we're talking about, like, people were drafting Jonathan Brooks. I'm not even a part of, dynasty leagues. They were drafting Jonathan Brooks in late rounds thinking for a single season, thinking that he was going to play, like, a majority of the year. And I was like, guys, what are you doing? Where are you hearing this from? Because everybody on the beat knew that it was going to take a long time for him to come back from this ACL surgery. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no. This is like a frustrating point for me, and it's one of like the things, and I don't want to get on like a pulpit here, but like, and I'm not saying what we do is harder or we're all knowing. I'm just saying, like, with injuries and stuff like this, when it's a prolonged injury, I would trust local. We're there every day. You have these fantasy football analysts who do a great job, who just lean into what they know, right? And they don't know everything, and they don't read everything. And obviously, you're most of the time you're paying for our commentary at thecharlotteobserver.com. But what I would say is, I've said all year this was the Chuba Hubbard year. I have said this since March. It has not changed. I've never wavered. That's how it's always been. That's from talking to people inside the building, outside the building, talking to Chuba, talking to teammates. I've also maintained that they were going to take their time with Brooks because there was literally no reason not to. They've invested a ton in him. This is about 2025 as much as it's about, even more so than it's about 2024. And so, they're paying Miles Sanders no matter what. That's something we can get into later. But Jonathan Brooks has been activated. I'm somewhat skeptical he's going to play this weekend, and I'll tell you why. Mm-hmm. They're dealing with like a really slippery surface. Soccer fields are very different than what they're accustomed to. He's been out and hasn't had contact since November of last year, almost an entire year. They still have Miles Sanders under contract. This just kind of feels like not the best way to debut him. And I mused about this on social media the other day, just because it was something that nobody's really talked about. But in theory, you could activate him now. Yes, you have to make the roster move. They have 3 open spots following the trade deadline because they cut a linebacker and they already had 2 open spots. But you can give him 2 extra weeks of recovery, and then he can debut at home against the Chiefs. That's the draw, right? Like, Panthers fans can come and see the debut of Jonathan Brooks. Yes, they're playing the Chiefs, who are running through everybody like a knife through butter. But cool, you get to see Jonathan Brooks. Yeah. The one positive I would say to having Jonathan Brooks play this week would be you give him 5 to 6 touches, and then he's got a week to recover with the bye week because he's going to be sore. It's going to be a build-up. And so it'll be interesting to see how they play this. What do you think, Alex?
No, the thing that I keep coming back to with the Jonathan Brooks conversation is, where are the touches going to come from? Because you got this is Chuba Hubbard's team. He's averaging anywhere between 15 to 20 carries a game. You got Miles Sanders coming in on third down. He's almost an exclusively third down back at this point. Raheem Blackshear, running back number 3 in the depth chart, hasn't notched a handoff all season. He's barely playing offensive snaps. He's the punt returner, the kick returner, which he struggled in this year, by the way. And now you're going to add in Brooks, a second-round draft pick, like the first running back taken in the NFL draft. Like you said, this is a play for 2025, not 2024. Because what are you going to do? You got 4 running backs who have proven that they're pretty good. One of which or 3 running backs that have proven that they're pretty good. One in Jonathan Brooks, who has all this potential and hype around him, and it's already hard to feed those 3. And so, I mean, I guess I think that's why a lot of reporting and a lot of speculation was done about this Miles Sanders thing. And I get it. His contract made it hard for him to move before the trade deadline. But I'm more interested in how Brooks's introduction to the 53-man roster impacts the rest of the room. Because at this point this season, not much I don't think is going to change. Like you said, the benefits of getting him out there in Germany is he's going to get like anywhere between 2 to 5 carries, with Chuba still bearing most of the load because, again, he's on a contract year. And, again, he's running great. I mean, is he gonna take over for Miles Sanders and you're going to devalue Miles Sanders more as an asset? This is the puzzle that I'm more interested in, less so, hey, how can Jonathan Brooks impact this offense immediately?
Can I give you some numbers?
Yeah.
So Sanders is averaging 19.7 snaps and 6.3 touches per game. When you split that in half, that's not a lot. Really, so each of them are going to get 3 touches. No, I don't think that's going to be the case. It is important to note that if you release a player during or following the trade deadline, no matter if they're a vested veteran or not, they're subject to waivers. If the Panthers are hoping that they can get somebody to claim his contract, get them off the the hook for a couple $1 million or whatever, awesome. Either way, you're paying him. So you've got to figure out a way to develop Brooks and also, make the best decision with Sanders. So we'll see how that goes from here.
Yeah, 100%.
So, Alex, let's get into the actual game that's going to be played this weekend in Munich, Germany. Have you heard that there's a Panthers beat reporter in Munich, Germany about to cover the team?
Yes, I believe his name is Michael Excellence Kaye.
Close. That's what my parents originally thought about naming me, but they settled for Evan.
Yeah.
As you can tell, I'm kind of nasally today, as always. Let's get into this because the Giants aren't a good football team. Neither are the Panthers, but they're both 2-7. The numbers for the Giants are just ghastly outside of their sack numbers. Their sack numbers are scary real. They lead the league with 35 sacks through 9 games. To put that into perspective, the Panthers have 10 through that same time period. But as good as they are at getting to the quarterback, they're not all that great at forcing takeaways. They're not very good against the run. They're last in the league in yards per carry allowed average. They're 28th overall against the run. They're allowing 142.6 yards per game. They're kind of middle of the pack in basically everything else. But, this defense can be run on, and if there's anything that we know that the Panthers can do, it's they can run the football. Offensively, they are ghastly. They are averaging 15.4 points per game. They're only averaging 306.1 yards per game. That point per game average is last in the league, and then they're 26th in total offense. Yikes. But the Panthers aren't that much better. They're ranked 29th in the league in points per game at 16.3. And they're actually averaging less net yards per game with 277.9. That's a lot of number jargon. I'll just say this. These two teams are about to make some ugly, beautiful magic together, probably similar to the way that the Saints and the Panthers did last week.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you get, sometimes you have a party, right? And you're really looking forward to having 3 of the 5 guests that are coming. But those two extra guests, they're kind of wild cards, right? Like one of them really, really likes to talk about their ferret collection, and the other
Oh,
one, the other one really is into Broadway musicals. And somehow they find a common ground and they say, you know what? I like ferrets. You like musicals. Let's make a Cats inspired, mock song in the middle of the living room. And
okay.
hey,
Hold
it's a
on,
fun
Mike. Just
time.
real quick, and I know that this is going to distract from the point, but are you comparing someone who is a ferret enthusiast? Are you comparing them to someone who likes musicals? Because I'm a big
No, I'm
musical
saying
theater
they're two
fan.
different people
Uh-huh.
who find a common interest.
And thus creates magic.
Yeah,
And
right,
and
exactly. Like that's
honestly, to be clear, like put me in between those two. Like that
right.
sounds like
That's my point. You
okay.
want the
All right.
eclectic people. You like
Yes.
your best friends. You're around all the time. You know what they like. Like you've had almost every conversation. True best friends like you and me. We talk about everything. There's nothing that really surprises either one of us anymore. I would think. Like I always find it funny. Like whenever we hang out with like cousins that I've never hung out with as an adult, there's always something zany about them. Or
Oh
like
yeah.
my wife's friends' husbands, like they'll always say something like random at a thing, and I'll be like, "Wow, I didn't see that coming." You know what I mean? Like that's what this
Yes.
Giants Panthers game is in Munich. And also, again, I keep bringing this up. It's a very slippery surface. It's something that they're not used to. It's an international game where you'll have fans in the stands wearing jerseys from literally every team.
Yep.
Um, it's just like a weird, like underground fight club of a matchup, and like this is
Yeah.
going to be, a beautiful mess. And
Yeah.
I really truly believe that.
I w- I want to get your opinion on this before I talk about well, I can just get out who I think is going to win. I think the Giants are ultimately going to prevail. I'm not going to fall into the trap of the Panthers looked good against the Saints. That's how you lose in our predictors league
Hey,
between
I've had this game as a win for them since the schedule came out. So I am not going to
Oh, so you
alter
also,
it.
when the schedule came out, you predicted that Bryce Young was going to be benched in week 2. You also predicted
No, I did
that half
not.
the defense was going to be bloodied and bruised and out for the year. Like, okay, all right.
But I'm sticking with this one. This one feels like the win. This feels
Okay,
like the win. And look,
okay.
if they do get the win, they have won more games than the team did last year in just 10 games. That's something to hang your hat on going into the bye week. And Bryce Young would tie his career single season win total, potentially.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. But this is a big picture NFL question that I've been meaning to pose to you. So a lot of people in wake of the fact that the Giants and Panthers are so bad and they are going to Munich and they are like the question that they keep asking me is, wait, so this is the product that the NFL wants to show on an international stage? And my response is kind of like what you said, and I want to get your opinion on this, is the fans there want to experience the NFL. They
Sure.
don't necessarily care. I wouldn't think. Again, I'm not a fan in Munich who thinks soccer is king. I grew up in the southeastern part of the United States where football has always been king. Really, I'm more of a basketball hoop state guy growing up like that because, North Carolina through and through, baby. But, but football was like truly king. You know what I'm saying? But I say all that to say this. They're going to be wearing different uniforms in the stadium. Like they are there to watch an NFL game. I don't think that they are going to be upset that they're not getting Patrick Mahomes. I don't think that they're going to be upset that they're not getting like this transcendent talent, at least in one of these teams, because like they're there for the vibes. They're there to enjoy. I don't like
This
the
is like opera
quality
to
of
them.
product. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I'm not doing a great job of explaining it, but it's like if I wasn't a huge soccer fan and
Right.
you bring over Messi, and now he's in
Right.
MLS, but and you bring over Cristiano Ronaldo into my hometown and say, look, this is the greatest soccer player ever. And I'm not used to seeing the sport live. I'm just like, okay, that guy's just like really good. Meanwhile, if you bring over two big clubs who are part of the biggest league in the world, I'm still going to think it's really dope. I don't know. That's how I kind of view this whole thing. And that's kind of my response when people ask me, what is the NFL's end game in bringing over two teams and putting them on an international stage when those two teams aren't any good? And my response is like, I don't think that the fans care necessarily about the talent on the field. I think they just want to experience the game, experience the spectacle, experience the culture.
I mean, it's well documented. I'm a Phillies fan. I love my baseball. And they went over to England and played back-to-back games against the Mets. And the crowds were great. A lot of people traveled for the games. I think that's part of it too. It's an experience for the internal fan base. But one of the jokes that's made is like most of the bad players on the Phillies this year played really well over in London. So like there's like a joke that like Taijuan Walker is the best pitcher that London's ever seen. And he had like the worst like year in of a starting pitcher in baseball this season. And one of the worst of all times for the Phillies. Whit Merrifield hit a home run, and he was cut in the middle of the year. So like it's just stuff. Like the thing about international games, I think, is there's a sect of the NASCAR audience that watches NASCAR to see collisions and danger, and I think that there is a sense of like, especially European sports, there's like a gladiator-esque feel to it, right? Like soccer is a very serious and passionate fan base. I think that's kind of what this kind of leans into. It's like, cool, these are two scrappy teams. And I don't know about you, but when I was younger, I always rooted for the underdog. And I always felt like if my team wasn't in it, I was rooting for a team that had never won I think there's an opportunity for European fans, whether they gravitate towards the Giants or towards the Panthers, to really kind of embrace this long term. And we're going to see if this takes shape. I mean, I think European fans, and in dealing with a lot of European fans when I covered the Jaguars, because they went to London all the time, and covering the Eagles, the thing about European fans is they take being a fan very seriously, because they know that they're going to be mocked for being European fans and choosing teams and all this other stuff. So they really need to know their stuff. And what I think is really cool, and talking to some Panthers fans who are in Germany or in Europe, they take it so seriously. Like they know the X's and O's. They care about the salary cap stuff. They're the type that subscribes to the Charlotte Observer. And I find that really endearing. So I think like you said, this is a matter of spectacle. This is not a matter of wins or losses. I don't think it's that deep for the general European NFL fan, but I do think for folks that have really gravitated towards the sport, this is a payoff for them for being dedicated. And I think that that's good for the game. Do I ever think that the NFL is going to be the number one international sport? Absolutely not. But I do think, in our business and in the business of football, it's great to see guys come over in the International Pathway program. The Panthers have a wide receiver from Scotland who's over here. And there's been success stories. And so I'm really interested to see the stories that come out in Munich. I literally just got here a few hours ago. So hopefully we'll get to tell some of those stories on charlotteobserver.com. But Alex, now is the time to send us out.
Yeah. And Mike, I really wish I would have thought of that NASCAR analogy, because that was gold. I know friends who like when I covered NASCAR and when I really cared, I still do follow it quite closely. And a lot of them were like, yeah, I went to the NASCAR race on Saturday. I was like, oh, well, you saw the Xfinity race. You didn't see the Cup guys. They were like, oh, really? We didn't even see the best people? I'm like, yeah. Well, did you still have fun? And they're like, yeah, I had a great time. I wish I would have thought of that NASCAR analogy, Mike. That was quite good. What else is quite good? was your performance on this podcast. Thanks, as always, for listening to our pontifications on all things Panthers with Mike Kaye and myself and our wonderful producer, Zach Dennis. Please subscribe and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts by searching Processing Blue. And if you watch us on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to get notified whenever new episodes drop. And finally, please be sure to stick to charlotteobserver.com for all your Panthers needs. Stay humble, stay creative, and keep processing.
I don't know how to say that's a wrap in German, so that's a wrap. Oh, Zach, shout out.